This morning I'm joined by Rashenda King, author of Fire to Finish, a powerful new book that weaves together personal setbacks, purpose, and resilience. Good morning and welcome to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good morning, good morning.
Listen, it is such a pleasure to have you on. You've got this book that you wrote, Fire to Finish, and it talks about so much of what you experienced being fired 3 times,
Yes,
right? And coming
absolutely.
back from that. So tell us a little bit about it.
So I was fired 3 times, and the 3 times that I was fired, I was actually the top HR executive in the companies where I was fired. And so it tells you that it's not just important to get a seat at the table, it's important to know how to keep a seat at the table. So being fired didn't cause me to, become discouraged or despondent or anything like that. In fact, it actually caused me to focus to finish what I started.
Right.
So Fire to Finish talks about how when you're fired, and you can be fired from so many different things in life. You're not just fired from a job. You're fired sometimes from a relationship, from a marriage. There are so many ways that you could be fired in life. But it tells you that when you're fired, you stop, you pivot, you refocus, and then you determine this is the direction that I want to go in. So Fired to Finish for me was being fired to finish building my legacy, doing the things I wanted to do, doing the things that God purposed me to do. And so I focused on that, and here I am today.
Wow, what a powerful story. I have to ask you though, in the moments when you were fired, like you mentioned 3 times, were you ever discouraged, or did you always just sort of have that power that I've got to finish this race, I need to pivot? Tell us about that.
There were moments when I was discouraged,
Yeah.
right? But I never said that to myself. I always said, it's okay. I was not fired because I did something wrong. I was not fired because I was incompetent. I was fired because a company wanted to move in a different direction. And that's fine, because companies may want to do that from time to time. In the seat, especially in HR, sometimes you have to do things that may not be in line with what the company wants to do, but you know that it's in line with what you know is the right thing to do.
Right.
And so you have to be brave enough to stand up and say, this is not right, and I'm not prepared to do this, or I'm not prepared to continue to move something in a certain direction.
Right.
Right?
And I
And
think
so it's really about making sure that you understand what your purpose is and what the right thing is to do, and to always do the right thing.
yeah, I think that's so important. And you mentioned being in HR, but I feel like that can be applied to every other job, right? At the end of the day. So tell us, when people read this book, what do you want their takeaway to be?
I want them to think about what they want to do in life. I want aspiring leaders to know that they can be good leaders. And I want good leaders to know that they can become great leaders. And how do we do that? We do that by continuing to learn and to grow. We also do that by mentoring people, mentoring other people. I mean, so many people poured into my life, and I want to be able to pour into other people's lives. And everyone who has become a leader needs to understand that their responsibility is to mentor others. So this is what I want people to do. I want there to be a connection and meeting of the minds of leaders and aspiring leaders to make sure that they are moving in the right direction. They are charting a course for their future. In the book, I have a free giveaway mentorship, and we want to start to have that conversation, because mentorship is very important.
Yeah, I can only imagine that you had to be so vulnerable to be able to write this. And I don't know, I can't say that I know any sort of friends or family members who would go through something like this and want to put themselves in that position to be out there. So just tell us about why that was important for you and that vulnerability that you would have experienced writing.
Because it's important to be authentic. In this book, I'm my authentic self. I am that little girl who understood that she needed to learn and grow and develop, and who understood that she needed to be positive. She needed to break some cycles in her life. She needed to chart a course. She needed to think independently. So this is not about just me being vulnerable. Also, it's about other little girls or other little boys out there who may be discouraged, who someone may say, oh, you're never going to amount to nothing, right? And to take that and turn that around and make that a positive force in their life.
Yeah. You know, when I think about the title and just your story, I think anybody can pick this up, even someone that's not being fired, and be
Absolutely.
inspired.
Absolutely.
But when you wrote it, who was this written for?
Well, initially I think it was written for me.
Okay.
Because one of the things I never wanted to do is to be a victim and to allow persons to dictate what I do in my life or who I am and who I will become. I never wanted to do that. And so this was my way of, I think my children got tired of me telling some of the stories. And so I was like, I need to find another audience, right? So yeah, I think I wrote this to make sure I document what would have happened. And by documenting, you put people in a position to read and learn and hopefully, get something from it that can turn their life around, make it positive.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
So where can we find your book?
Well, I would say that I do have copies available. We had the book launch recently, so I do have copies available. And so my contacts are on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Also, I'm going to be talking to a number of groups and audiences, and so the book will be available.
Right.
You just need to reach me and you can get the book.
All right. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
So much for sharing your story, and all the best as
Thank
you
you.
pivot and move forward, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching Bahamas at Sunrise. Be sure to check out the book, Fired to Finish. We'll be right back.